So, hello everyone here. I think this is a very important video here talking about why people really hate Attack on Titan. That being said immediately here, you can be an anime only and watch this video. So I'm gonna explain to you right what Isayama is good at and what he's really bad at. And as we saw yesterday in this episode, that and the whole last season of part 2 right, kind of shows you what he's bad at, and especially of course with Gabby, the new main character. And that coming into then the final episode, right, really ruins the one thing he's good at, right? So I call it the macro and the micro issues, right? First of all, though, I will hate this defense. It isn't really a defense, right? That every time you complain about the writing of this like really boring camp episode, whatever, people are always like, "Oh, you should like dialogue." You should, yeah. See, have you ever seen the animes? Trust me, people, you have never seen the animes, okay? People that complain about that, you have never seen stuff like Bunny Senpai. Bunny Senpai. Let's have a figure, of course, here, right? Still in box, right? I have Bunny Senpai behind me and so on. I'll cover this more later in the video, right? But Bunny Senpai here, right? Animes like Bunny Senpai is just banter. Animes like Kimi no Todoroki has no, action whatsoever, right? Yet, they are incredibly giving animes. 10 times better than Attack on Titan. I'm just killing immediately, okay? This anime here has zero action whatsoever. Yet, it's much better than Attack on Titan, right? Because, so I just immediately, that whole notion of, there's just people only complain. No, that's a complete straw, man. It's not a real argument. The issue with this micro then, I'm coming to sooner, right, isn't that, oh yeah, it's micro, right? The issue is that the micro is terribly bad, right? You can watch so many animes that only has micro, and yet they are amazing, right? But anyway, let's first have to talk about what is micro and what is macro, right? So micro or macro can be something like this, right? You write a macro in a code, right? A micro can be something like you play a video game, you can micro your probe against search or whatever, right? No, I'm just kidding, of course. So a macro, when it comes to writing, and this is very important here because this is what Isayama is good at, right? A macro is something like the premise, right? A macro is something like the lore, the backstories, right? Kind of the general notion of the world and so on, right? That's a macro. So instead of just calling this thing, world building or whatever, right? I'm going to use the word macro because that summarizes all this stuff as world building, backstories, again, lore, it's all of that, right? It's all of that, the broader, the paintbrush that makes the big painting, right? Micro, that is the characters, right? The characters are stuck in this world, right? The world itself, that's the macro, right? And the micro is detailed. And especially the detailed of the micro is something like, the dialogue, right? Or maybe the appearance or whatever. That's a fine detail of micro, right? How does character look? How do they dress and so on, right? That's a very fine detail of micro. But usually micro then is the characters, right? And how they act and it's characters all right. And let's just say it here immediately because we all know this is true. Even the people who kind of want to cope that, but we all know it's true, right? Attack on Titan has shitty micro, okay? Isayama would never be a good starter player because holy shit, man, he can't write micro, right? We have characters like Mikasa, one-dimensional flat rock, right? We have Yelena, that is Mikasa again, I'll cover this more in the video, but there's so many terrible written characters in Attack on Titan. So clearly the character are badly written, but they are in an interesting world, right? And that's what he's good at, right? So let's just go over it, right? And obviously the biggest issue that he ever did was just, swapping out Eren to Gabby and so on, right? For some reasons, but anyway, let's talk about what he did good, right? And why it's kind of fails, right? So, first of all then, that's the biggest issue immediately, right? I mean, it's like, who told him to replace the main character and put in an even worse main character? And let's face it here, like, Eren is a bad main character. I'll come back more later to it, but Eren isn't a good main character to begin with. He's not a well-written main character, a very boring main character. He's just like, oh, I want to get for my mom or something, right? And then he does this complete heel flip, right? After, of course, a time skip. But he doesn't make Gabby, of course, becomes the main character instead. And then Gabby is just... Gabby, to a large extent, what's it called? Gabby is like Eren 2.0, right? She's just another Eren, just even less interesting and even more, shoehorned or so on, right? So it kind of shows that he already had a bad start. And I was like, well, I'll do another one. So that's probably the biggest issue. But anyway, what he did good, though, what he did good is, of course, the mystery, right? So mystery is not a part of the macro, right? So Attack on Titan and why it's popular, the two main reasons, right? First of all, it was an interesting premise to begin with, right? We have these people that's stuck behind these walls. It's some kind of like, humans fighting these huge zombies, really zombies, right? And that was interesting, and it was kind of violent. Okay, so people got interested. And then we had the mystery, right? We had the basement. We had, what is this thing, right? We had the key, or where the key and so on. And this is the stuff that really people like Attack on Titan, and really got people interested in, right? The mystery, the progress, right? Okay, what's going to happen? We're going to go with this stuff, right? What is the actual truth? And again, the photograph and so on, right? But even before you know the truth, this is the intriguing part, right? So what Isayama is good at writing is, of course, again, this macro stuff, right? He's good at setting up an interesting world, right? With these huge titans and these circles and so on. He's good at setting up this mystery of what's happening in the basement, what will we find in and so on, right? So that is, of course, his massive strength, right? And we can talk about more of that later as well. But just from a premise standpoint, there immediately, right, you have the Titan City, and then you have the mystery of the basement. Then introduces other stuff, like you have the Rodriguez, you have the royal family, and this stuff and so on. So he's really good at building up, again, the mystery and the world building, right? That's his good part. However, he got shitty characters, right? Just straight up. The characters are terribly written, of course, Mikasa being the worst of all the characters. Mikasa being this obsessive one-dimensional character, right? That has terrible writing, and it's always hilarious to me when people are like, "Oh, Mikasa, strong female character." How many strong female character? Her only personality is she wants to sleep with Eren. That's her only personality trait. That's a terrible female character. A strong female character is someone that can find, like Malone is a strong female character. Noelle is a strong female character. Like Clover only has strong female character. Now, what seriously, if you want to see an anime that's fighting, right, like an action-packed anime with strong female characters, you gotta watch something, right, like Black Clover, right? Where like every goddamn female character has a great fight scene and so on, right? And, they have character development and so on, right? And they learn from their mistakes and they evolve, right? And I think Black Clover, especially with Noelle, you feel like that is, Tabata has written a female character on so that basically like she was the male, shonen protagonist, right? Arguably, right? She has basically all the traits, right? But that's why it just feels much more like, okay, this works, badass female character growing, right? Where Mikasa is just like, never has any character development whatsoever, right? In like 87 episodes, how much development has she had? Oh, I'm in love with Eren. Oh, I'm more in love with Eren now, right? Like, there's no development there whatsoever. Look at the scene when she talks to Armin. Armin is like, he's gonna destroy the planet! And she's like, have you seen my scarf? Right? What? Episode yesterday, Mikasa, Sasha's like, oh my god, ice cream is awesome and so on, right? She's like, Eren, where's Eren? Eren, wanna have ice cream? Immediately, right? Terrible character. Insanely terrible character. And truly incredibly boring. And nothing is good with Mikasa. She's a terrible character. And again, a strong female character is someone like my senpai. This is a strong, interesting female character with personality, character development, right? And actually has interesting dialogue with her love interest and so on, right? And they learn from each other and they actually, improve their personalities, right? And so on, right? How much of Eren actually affected Mikasa in a positive way, right? And honestly, that's probably one of the worst things that tells you that I think that has really terrible micro, because normally in a relationship, right, with actual people, if you have a decent relationship with two people, right, you grow together, right, like you date and you have this is your girlfriend, and then she teaches you about this stuff, you learn about that stuff, and you have this like back and forth, right? So for example, if you look at an anime like there's lessons in Dress Up Darling, like Marin and Gojo, right, they're actually growing together, right? And they're improving each other, right? Both knowledge and personality and empathy and sympathy and so on, right? But I think a Titan has like, where is the Titan? It's non-existent, right? Basically, no one ever changes this anime, and they never learn shit from each other or anything. Right? They really don't. And the only character that basically changed is Gabby, right? And also Jean, basically. And of course, Eren does a flip, but Eren does a massive flip, right? That's not really development. He just goes from one end to another immediately, right? In between the time skip, yeah. And it's incredibly inorganic. Why does it that? And then it can be flips back again in the chapter. It's even worse, yeah. Honestly, the worst thing with Eren is probably that he flips incredibly once, and then in the far end, he flips back again for no reason, right? Which makes it even worse, yeah. Like it's even less serious, it's even less organic, characterization of personality, right? So basically, no person in Attack on Titan is written like an actual human, right? Like this is how it is. So the market is just terrible, and we have stuff for. I said again here, Eren was a terrible main character to begin into. He wasn't a very good main character. I will say this thing though. He's not the worst main character ever. He's not Takamichi, right? He's not the worst man. I'm not saying he's the worst main character. I'll probably get angry with me, whatever. But he's not the worst main character. But he's pretty lackluster, you know. He's not special with Eren. Oh, my mom died and now I'm angry, right? But, you know, he has no real, you know, interesting dialogue or this thing. Or he acts just kind of rashing out, very emotional. Basically, Eren is very one-dimensional. Just like Mikasa, right? And then he changes to another dimension. That's the thing with Eren, right? He goes from one dimension, right? Like maximum X into minus X, you know what I mean? There is nothing in between it. There's really no nuance in his characterization, right? And he never really gets out of that. And the only few scenes with Eren feels like an actual person, right? It's the Historia scenes in the cave, and then it's like Historia is one of the few characters that has actual character development and actually has an interesting characterization, right? And then Eren kind of just completely omits that anyway later. So it's just like, okay, yeah, for a moment there, it almost happened something, and then it was gone, right? And then it was dead, right? And of course, Gabby has character development, but she has the most forced ever, right? So a big issue then with the latest episodes, right, is how mostly they are really bad padded out, right? And of course the manga is the same. The manga was shit here too, right? Because stuff like Connie and Falco just makes no sense. Like, why is there an episode about Connie kidnapping Falco? Logically never made any sense, because saving his mom for one day and then Claire dies is so stupid, right? But also immediately afterward, like best friends afterward, right? This is a horrible characterization of Connie. He suddenly snapped on personality. And how it doesn't affect Falco or Gabby, whatever, afterwards, also terrible, right? So no one here is acting like an actual human, right? And Armin immediately gives him someone, and then Connie is completely irrelevant after this, right? And he also was basically irrelevant for the whole manga at this point, right? But this was a terrible point. So that is like this episode you can basically ignore, right? Like the half that doesn't make any sense, because of course they get to Annie and Hitch, and this thing is also terrible, right? It's a cute little Yuri moment between these two girls, right? And you know I love them, I ship them, you know, and so more, right? But what is the point of this episode? This is not the point of an episode where you're like, oh, so we learned Annie's backstory, and Hitch is the only person knowing this thing, right? So at least you would assume that when they're gonna recruit Annie, they would, you know, talk to Hitch, and Armin is like, can we trust Annie? Then Hitch would be like, oh, but well, you know, but I know about her father, and she wants to do this. So at least someone could motivate, you know, why she trusts Annie, right? Because yeah, she wants to save her father, so that's the reason we should take her in a team, because we have a goal that we can, you know, we can cooperate together, right? Because at least we have to stop Eren for some reason, right? But no, it's just goddamn pie scene happens, right? Hitch doesn't even talk to them, so everything we saw with Hitch and Annie is completely irrelevant as well, right? It's completely pointless. It doesn't have anything to do with it. Isayama forces them all together. A lot of comment yesterday about the cringe Avengers. He just pushed them all together, ran away. What's the point, right? And that really shows you how he cannot write characters. He cannot write actual organic, you know, characterization, right? An actual dialogue or so on. And that's why coming back again, when I'm also tired of people saying, oh, you just want action. No, I want proper dialogue. I want proper character development, right? Like, what is the point of having Hitch and Annie have this like date etchy Yuri scene for half an episode, right? And then it's like, whatever, we touch each other, almost kiss, whatever, yeah, I learned about the love, and now I like to be best friends, whatever, right? Best girlfriends forever, and then no one even talks to Hitch, you know what I mean? It's just so bad, right? That arguably could be the worst writing thing of Titan, even worse than the ending, that Hitch has a whole episode of her and Annie's relationship, and it's completely omitted, right, from the actual story later. They couldn't even talk to Hitch and ask her, like, okay, should we trust Annie? Well, yeah, I mean, it could be 1 minute, right? With Armin is like, what, Annie is here? And Colin's like, oh, boy! And then Hitch gets there, right? And they're like, she's like, you gotta recruit Annie. She wanna save her dad, right? Like, just having that scene would have made the episode so much better. Instead, they just don't even talk to her. They just leave immediately, right? So what was the point of Hitch then? You know what I mean? That's terrible writing. And this is kind of what he does all the time. Because you can, of course, you can skip over the Connie and Mom scene, right? And this is why this season here really shows you how he can't write on micro, right? Because every goddamn episode, more or less, from the rumbling to the latest episode, right, are more or less pointless. All the character interaction is terribly written. The dialogue is poor, right? And no one really grows from anything. No one really learns anything. And also, Kor's character constantly act out of character when they're previously established, right? So, for example, Mikasa being obsessively in love with Eren, right? His younger soccer girlfriend. Why is she suddenly just agreeing to kill him, you know? Doesn't make any sense, right? And they never explain why she does that. It's because she has to force the ending, right? He has to force some shoehorn ending. And especially the scene when she is confronted by Annie, oh, we should have fight about this stuff, right? it doesn't make any sense just backing down for not fighting Annie. It's just incredibly forced, because if they actually fight, Annie's gonna die or whatever, right? And so, and also it's terribly predictable, because we as the reader, right, knows that they can't actually fight there, because then Annie's gonna die or whatever, or Becasue gonna die and so on. Right? They can't actually have like a real fight, so that would ruin the whole premise, right? So instead of having them actually develop and actually have a good conversation before the team up, this is this forced tension, right? That we all know has no purpose, right? So even if I love, for example, when Jean hits Rainer, because everyone hates Rainer, Jean is the best character, right? So it's a good scene from that standpoint. But from a writing standpoint, it's a terrible scene as well, because how did that matter? You know what I mean? It's a pointless scene, right? Because how did it actually matter how Rainer hates Eren, right? He's depressed or whatever, but Rainer was always on your side anyway. Rainer is the person that wants to kill Eren the most, basically, right? So to recruit Rainer, be like, hey, type the guy you want to have us fight Eren? He's like, yeah, I hate that guy, right? So it's just pointless, right? It's just pointless. He always wanted to hate him anyway. It's a good scene per se, but from an actual, contextual standpoint, it's really like, whatever, because he was in the team anyway, right? And then maybe it could have mattered if next episode Rainer actually was a good fighter again, but no, because Rainer is the Worf, right? So he's a spalled bunch. He gets completely destroyed, and too for that matter, by these random, Jaegerists, right? So it wasn't like he had like a change of heart, and now he's like super serious, now he's gonna fight properly, right, after he beat him up. No, he still sucks at the fight, right? So nothing changed, right? If you skip the whole Jean scene, even though I love the scene because he's the best character, but if you skip the whole scene of him beating up Rainer, what would you have missed, right? Because Rainer acts exactly the same as he did the episode before, right? He's all like, oh, I'm gonna fight them. Oh, I'm a tank, and he almost dies, right? Like he does the exact same thing in the fight before, and the fight before that, and the fight before that. But yeah, there's no difference between Rainer in episode X and Y, right? It's the exact same shit, right? So that didn't lead to any important development whatsoever. The only thing it kind of leads to is that him and I guess Jean are friends in the last episode or something, in the last chapter, I guess. I guess in like the epilogue they're friends or whatever, I guess, or something. But it doesn't actually matter for the actual story, right? So that's happening all the time, and that's why this whole season, right, or half at least, right, really shows how the marker is so lacking. And that's of course a massive problem. And I kept saying this, in the manga too. It's like, long before the anime, or sorry, the manga ended, I kept saying, right, for years, that this is bad writing, right? This is terrible slow pace. There's no purpose doing this stuff, all right. And then the ending appeared, and people love to cope with saying that the ending is the only bad thing. No, the whole path to the ending is bad too. And also the last fight is bad as well, right? Because there's so much plot hole and this shit and so on. Right? But even looking at that, this is the issue, right? He can't write characters. And of course, as I always kept saying, Gabby is the most obvious thing, right? They put in Gabby as a new main character, and he's shoehorns in, right? He's a Becasue, right? She's in every goddamn scene, she kills every character, right? And she's incredibly predictable, because every time someone has to die, Gabby has to do it, right? So Gabby kills 3 people, right? Yeah, Gabby kills Sasha, Flosh, and Eren, right? And it's just like, my god, this character is an object, not a character. That's of course because he is good at writing macro, right? He's good at writing the mystery. He's good at writing the basement. He's good at writing this world building, right? And now he needs, for the plot, from going to point A to point B, and he can't really figure out how the character are gonna act like an actual organic human manner, right? So he throws in these very forced plot points to force them to act very inorganically to get to that point. That's why this last season, and even further, I said the last 2 seasons, right, after time skip, feels very, very inorganic, right? The characters aren't really acting as humans. And especially then Gabby in that case, right, is forced into this positioning. Why is Gabby at I hate this scene, right? Why is Gabby there? It doesn't make any sense. She's just there because it's Gabby, right? Why is she killing everyone? Because it's Gabby, right? Why is Gabby here? So she's at the anti-plot, right? Because he's using Gabby as a plot object, right? Not as a person. Using her as a plot object to force the plot forward into the end goal he wants, right? The same thing, of course, again, right, with the pie scene, right? Like, he needs to make all the characters come together, and he cannot figure out a good way, so he wastes his time with, like, Connie's mom and so on, right? And then he just forces them all together at this stupid pie scene, and suddenly they're all teaming up, right? And it feels incredibly forced, because it is incredibly forced. And one reason you think about it is, what if Armin had said, oh shit, Anne is probably free now since Eren did this Titan thing. I'm gonna go to her prison because, I wanna smash her anyway, right? And he jumps to the prison, he meets Annie, and then she explains to him that, I wanna save my dad because Armin's he's gonna kill, Armin, please trust me, Aaron is gonna kill my dad, right? And Armin, being in love with her, right, because of Banholt, and also sounds like a decent argument to believe her, right? Also, I need the power, would then accept her to join the party, right? That would have been a better storyline than meeting her at the fighting. It would be much more organic and feel much more realistic, right? And also, it would go way faster. It would be way better pacing. You don't need to spend like a whole episode of Annie and Hitch having their dates, right? You can just have Armin talk to Annie for like 3 minutes and be like, oh yeah, I believe you. And like okay, or I have to, I guess, not believe you, but like I guess I hopefully believe you. Think about he's in love with her too. So it's like, I guess I believe you because it sounds plausible and I do want to have sex with you. So okay, let's go. Okay, let's go with that. Like it just makes that would make 10 times more sense, right? Than having this absurd scene at the pirate. Lord, I think a great example, honestly, is probably Zeke, or rather the Beast Titan versus Zeke, right? So we have this is a great example of this is when he's a good writer, right? He creates this new Titan coming in, right? We always had the mystery of who are the shifters, right? Who is this thing, right? We didn't know they were shifter per se, but it was like as Aaron can shift, and then we knew that okay, maybe someone else, or more so, if he can shift the main character, someone else also can probably do it, right? Okay, and then we have okay, who's the Ghost Titan who actually opened the gate or whatever, right? And that's a mystery. And then suddenly we have the Beast Titan, right? And this is really, I would argue, for the highlight, right, of Attack on Titan, because now it's very interesting here. We have a new Titan coming, right? All Titans are afraid of him, right? He has this real power, and he's like, interesting in invention. He can talk, right? He can throw shit, he can control Titans, right? He has a lot of these abilities and powers, right? And he's a mysterious, and he kind of comes off as the leader of them, right? And that is a great mystery. And Beast Titan is very interesting, right? Then we have the whole fight, of course, which, Takeya, Suzume advance, Irvin dies, spoilers, but I'm obviously spoiled for anime, yeah. So we have the whole fight against Beast Titan, right, with Levi, Irvin, and so on. That is clearly the highlight of Attack on Titan, right? This is the best part of Attack on Titan, when we don't really understand what Zeke is yet, right? We don't really understand who the Beast Titan is, what has his powers, right? How he relates to Banholt and Raynor, and of course Annie, and it is important that Annie, of course, is locked away, right? But those two guys are clearly afraid of him too, so that also gives an extra layer of, again, the macro, right? Because who are they? And then we figure out who they are, and it's like, what, but this guy? He's the boss or something? He's the real Titan leader? He can like create Titans? And I would say it's very obvious that he created, of course, Connie's mom and so on, right? That's very, very obvious. That was obviously figured out, everyone can appreciate that, right? And so we know that he's the guy behind Titans, right? And I'm not saying that he created all Titans, right? But at that point, because I was reading the manga and watching the anime, back then, right? I was going in from the beginning, right? So at that point, people were really like, wow, this guy is so interesting. Is he the one doing all that? He's the kind of evil guy that created the whole shit, right? He's probably living outside the walls, doing all this stuff, so on, right? So at this point, the macro was its highest, right? And then fighting him and so on, and fighting to that basement again, was of course the highlight of the manga, right? And then of course we get into the basement, we get the photo, it's like, oh, the world is fine, right? And I think it's very fair to say that after the time skip arrived, the manga and the anime really, really became way worse, right? Even people say, oh, it's interesting with this World War II stuff and so on. We all know that's way less interesting than the actual part happened before, right? Because honestly, the World War II stuff, that is pretty less creative, right? He's just taking World War II. Here's the evil Germans, here's the use, bam, It's not that interesting, right? Compared to what we had before, right? So this is the big part, right? And the mystery, and again, then the macro is really, really good, right? Then we get the micro, right? As soon as they actually transform Beast Titan, right? This interesting, mysterious leader of Titan, right? Into this whining like, oh, I wanna kill all people because the reason and my master told me this shit. Oh, little Ototo, let's destroy that. As soon as we lose, right, the Beast Titan mystery and turn into this whiny loser Zeke guy, right? He's way this likable, annoying character, right? And I think people have to really admit it, right? The Beast Titan was a great character, but Zeke is a shit character, yeah. I think it's probably the most obvious difference between macro and micro. Because here he's writing a macro character, right? He's writing a world-building, mysterious character, right? And he's not really writing about his personality, whatever. He's really explaining, who he is, right? It's more so he has this power, he has the mule type ability, my peak system, right? It's not about more this mysterious antagonist, right? They're doing something. But when it turns into this, like, antagonist, but, the details, right? Like, especially the micro, right? His personality, his dialogue, and so on. It's just mostly shit, right? I mean, sure, fine. I actually like the flashback, with his mom and dad and so on. I like that part, right? Again, that's macro, that's macro, though. That's macro level, right? Who his father is and mom and so on, right? That's the macro. That's the bigger picture, right? His mom and his smile. That's the bigger ideas, right? But his actual dialogue and his reasoning with Aaron and so on, how he treats with Aaron, that's the shitty micro, right? That's the poor dialogue, badly paced, dialogue, right? Unnecessary padding out, especially in the anime, right? That's the micro issue, right? When he was the mysterious bad guy, he was much, much better. And even when he had his flashback and so on, that also was better. But all the scenes with him and Aaron are pretty terrible. Yeah, so you're like, okay, yeah, it's just, oh my god. It could have been so much better. It could have been so much better. And that's also why I have to say again, right, coming back to this thing, but I feel that it's always so annoying seeing people defend Attack on Titan on its obvious micro issues where people are saying, oh, you want action. No, this is ridiculous. 1 House. This is an amazing anime, okay? About playing baseball. But really, it's about cheating and so on, right? So 1 House is about Tokichi that plays baseball. He's a pitcher, and he always knows if he should throw a slow ball or a fastball. And the anime has basically zero reaction, because it's about a guy cheating in baseball, basically. It's not about him mind-tricking people and lying to them. So, where's the action there, right? It's about him manipulating people, right? With good language, right? With good words. It's a wordsmith anime, okay? And this is one of my absolute favorite animes. I did a video last year about my, 3x, my absolute favorite animes. This is in my 3x3 animes, right? So this is like a stupid personal defense, but I truly think it's ridiculous. People always argue that, no, if you complain about the micro issue, etc., right, that you just want action and blood. No, I want better dialogue. I want more better written characters with actual development. I don't want, flat as a rock Mikasa and so on, right? The problem, again, with Titan is that the characters are terribly written, almost all of them, and them interact with each other. Like this episode is just shit. I'm boring. How can you actually really like the episode when you sit there and, oh, look at that, Mikasa and Eren is drinking alcohol for like 10 minutes, whatever. The whole scene with the Turks, right, the Ottomans. Yeah, okay, that's a pointless scene. More or less, you can have it in 1 minute, right? We all know the reason why, because he's gonna kill them all, right? And that's why it's like, oh my god, it's so sad, but you don't need to spend the whole episode on that. You can spend like half a minute just explaining that Eren and the other guys befriended these people, and still he's gonna genocide the planet, right? Like, you don't need to spend an episode on that. That's just terrible writing. You can just show it. Okay, if you know how I would have wrote it, I would have had more people. Okay, if anything, that's just shit. Because what better is to have Eren befriend more than one people, right? Maybe the first 3 minutes they meet the Turks, right? Okay. The next, 2 minutes, they are, I guess, I don't know, in Asia, okay? They meet some people in, Sia or something, okay? And the next minute, they're meeting people in America. Get my point, right? So you travel around, right? Meeting all these people, right? They're meeting this and this and this culture and that religion or whatever. And then they all die anyway. That would be way better. This is not even that good from that standpoint, right? If you think it's so important to see that Eren befriended people outside of paradise, right? That should have been better written too. That's even good written in that sense. Because he's spending like the whole episode showing him befriend like one kid, man. He could have befriended like 55 kids for different cultures. It's even good for what it is. And that is just ridiculous. But anyway, another anime that I have in my 3x3 list is Kaji, right? This is an anime, there's no action, they just play board games, but holy shit, is it a tense anime all the time. Sava, baby. Usually seen by Benfield as the best anime ever, right? Usually this anime is seen by a lot of people as, the greatest anime ever, right? And this anime is basically the opposite of Titan, right? So again, look at the camp scene in Titan. Terrible, boring, no tension. We all know that Becasue do shit, right? We all know Becasue will do anything as Annie. It's all just fluff, right, for padding out. And I know the manga is the same there. The manga is shit there too. The manga is the same. Nothing happens there. And we all know there is no actual tension, right? Look at Kaji. That's constant tension. When they're playing Gadam Yankin or some board game, right? They're playing card games and you feel like, oh my god, he could die at any moment. Shit, this is so tense. And so on. And that's why it's so important. And also for that bad example, in Kaji, anyone else, they're very, very similar animes to animes. Obviously, very, very similar. In these two animes, when something's happening, right, and it's like a tense moment or someone says something, right, it's a lot of like philosophy around it. They're like, oh, why would you say that thing? What does that mean, right? And they really dwell into why would he lie to me, or what does that mean, and so on. So the characters are very, very nuanced, very depth, right? They really go into like, okay, well, why is that? Yeah. Attack on Titan, everyone is basically just the worst one-dimensional things ever, right? Like, no one ever really reflects over anything. The only character that ever reflects is Jeed, right, you know? That's why he's the best character, yeah. No other character ever reflects what's happening, right? They don't really reflect of, like, why would Mikasa say this thing to me or whatever, right? You know, Armin's like, you're a terrible friend, but yeah, he doesn't reflect over her obsession with, you know, Eren or what he can do, you know. If Kadhi was there, he'd be like, oh shit, he would go like that. He would be like, you know, he would have so many, you know, there would be mind. He would have like an episode just reflecting on what's happening, right? So that's an issue too with the Titan. Instead of having these like 4 or 5 episodes where nothing happens, right, where they gather up the allies in like one pie scene, right? They could have had 5 minutes of them actually reflecting what's happening, right? They could have had much better dialogue and also inner reflection over why do I have to kill Eren? Can't I just join Eren? I want to kill the man, right? Or should I not join Eren? Or vice versa? Yeah. They could have spent so much more time instead of actually having the character develop, right? The personalities, right? Actually considering why should I do it? Right? Instead of have this like really bad padding plot, right? Where the character doesn't really evolve, they don't, nor do they really like reflect over why they're doing it. They're just being forced into this like shoehorned, oh, Connie's mom, whatever, right? Instead of having an episode of Connie considering, thinking, discussing, right, the philosophy of should we help Eren or not, right? So obviously Attack on Titan is very poorly written there because they don't have any depth to it, right? There's no real like interesting, deep analyzation of why should I kill Eren for and so on. And it's a massive issue here. It really is. But of course, again, because what he's good at is writing, you know, is the mystery. Right? He's good at writing the mystery. He's good at writing the world building. Again, the macro. He's not good at writing a character's inner monologue, you know. That's basically why the ending was so terrible. But again, for example, this is a completely different anime, right? This is one of the best animes ever. Kimi Todoroki, you know, romance anime, right? And I really want to see people saying here that this anime is bad because of action. You know what I mean? No, the anime is great. It's no action, but it's incredibly good dialogue, right? Incredibly good characters. Really, like, you know, I say realistically growing characters, right? Both in the love, but also in all the parts too, right? And how, for example, I'm gonna spoil it here, right? But one of the girls is in love with, you know, her friend's older brother, right? And she's gonna have to develop that. And she learned that her, you know, friend's older brother is gonna get married to another older woman, right? She has to kind of, you know, oh shit, oh man, maybe I had this stupid, you know, crush on, you know, a too old man, and maybe I actually like his younger brother, he's my best friend, and, you know, and so on. That kind of actual, like, growth from a person doesn't really exist in Attack on Titan, come on. It doesn't. The only character that really goes to that, I said it again, is Yin. Because Yin is the only person being like, maybe I should join, you know, like the nice, you know, I don't want to join these crazy scouts, right? I want to do that stuff. And then he's like, damn it, but I also want to save the planet, so, okay, fine, I own the scouts, right? He's like the only person that develops any basic characterization, right? And actually change. And like, I know Gabby does it too, but, you know, Gabby is like, in 5 minutes, she's changed her personality, basically. But it is a massive issue, right? It truly is. And the thing is that, because he really couldn't really, you know, establish, right, how it should happen, so on, right? You can force into it. And now I'm gonna do very minor spoiler here. So I'm gonna very, again, if you have me only, this is when I'm gonna spoil the ending, right? But not really, because I'm just talking about the ending. I assume most in the video have read the ending, right? But I'm already gonna spoil the ending, so I would argue, seriously, even if you're the anime only, you can still watch this last part here, because I'm not gonna explain much of it. I'm gonna explain this crap, okay? And so the ending is really, really hated, right? The ending goes from like freedom into like, I just wanna Mikasa, I wanna have a baby, something. It's a terrible, oh god, it's the worst thing ever. But, and also kind of funny that people are comparing this now to One Piece. It's currently having with Luffy. But anyway, while this scene is incredibly cringe and terrible writing, truly terrible writing, and it really calls what I'm talking about here, right? That Isayama can't write characters, right? So he cannot like he doesn't know how to portray Eren, you know, in an actual, you know, reasonable or not even plot hole manner, right? Because one thing he does constantly is that he presents the character, right? And they're very one-dimensional, so they have like one goal, and then he can't write them to actually change their opinion or, you know, he can't like make them do something else that makes sense. So he's like forcing them to use like flip-flop the whole personality, right? To do that, and they flip it back or whatever. And Aaron is the perfect example of that, right? So it's incredibly inorganic. He goes from, you know, maximum A to minus A, you know, absolute value, whatever, yeah. He just flips, you know, he just flips 180 degrees, right? That flips back again. And that is incredibly bad writing. But, so Aaron is the worst written character, definitely. But I don't even explain it. I mean, I would say this is how it is. But the big issue, right? And this is, of course, what the video is really about, and why people really dislike the anime, right? Or the manga ending, sorry, but also what anime too. He failed what he was good at, right? That's the big issue, right? So, I thought about here, right? I cannot present it, okay, he's bad at micro, right? And I think we all can agree on he's good at macro. That being said, and I step by step, I don't think he's the best macro author either, right? I think there are better macro authors. For example, I think One Piece, Oda is a better macro author. He's better world building and foreshadowing, for example. Even with the latest chapters of One Piece, I still think that Oda is a superior macro writer than Isayama. Furthermore, also he has a much better micro writer. He clearly beats him. He beats him in micro severely, and also someone beat him in macro, for example, in my opinion. But I think we all can agree on that the strength, right, of Attack on Titan is the macro, right? That's what I really mean, right? The strength is the macro. You can disagree with me that the micro sucks, right? But I think most people that actually are reasonable and logic-based will agree that the micro is clearly the weakest part. And even if you disagree with me that the micro is shit, I think we all can agree on that the macro is the good thing, and the micro is worse, right? So even if you say the micro is still good, I think we all again can agree on that the macro is still the better part, right? So even if you give the micro, let's say, 9 out of 10, macro is 10 out of 10, right? Of course, I would say that it's much, much more bigger disparity. But anyway, I do this to get my point, right? Everyone agrees that the macro is where the anime or the manga shines, right? So that kind of leads us to what the people really hate the ending for, right? The ending certainly is hated for this shit, right? Because it again really failed on the micro. Certainly the micro is insanely terrible in the ending, and that of course makes people angry, right? But the real reason, and of course the whole video's real topic is about, is that he really failed the macro spell, right? And that's what people really find good angry, right? Because I've been saying, right, for over a year that the micro is bad, right? So I've been saying that, oh, look at this chapter, look at this episode, the micro is bad, right? People are like, no, it's good. I'm like, no, it isn't. Prove to me how this is a good written character, Becasue. Prove to me how it's a good written character. And people are like, no, but she can like kill titans. Yeah, but how is she a good written character except that she should like kill him and shit? You know, like Mikasa. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of argument to get right. So people have never been able to defend the bad micro, right? Because you can't defend it because it really is bad. It's objectively a terrible characterization, right? Characters. So, but people have still refused, right, to say that the manga or anime was bad until the last part, right? Because of course the macro is so strong, right? So people are like, they're so in love with the mystery and, you know, the world or whatever, right? So they can kind of blind, right? They can kind of turn their eyes from the terrible characters, right? That is the truth, right, from a mental standpoint. I'm doing it from like a mental, you know, standpoint, right? And that is of course why the manga / chapter is so hated, because there he really failed the macro. See my point? So until that point, right, the macro was going downhill. Don't get me wrong. The macro was much shittier after the, again, right, the highlight, if you go back to the video, right, what was the best part? Base Titan, right, you know? Like this is the best part. Base Titan, the basement, so on. That was the macro was at its peak, right? So since then the macro has absolutely went down, but the macro was still, you know, going down but slower, right? But in the last, I don't know, 10 or so chapters, right, the macro also plummets, right? And especially in the later 2-3 chapters of the last part there, again, not really spoiling it, right, the macro just really plummets, right? The actual, you know, the general storyline, the goddamn caterpillar magically and shit, all this crap is just goes to that, right? It really hits like a massive, you know, from like a 6 or 10 to 0, right? And that's of course why people really hate him in the end, right? Because I think most people that were still like fans, right? Even after the terrible time skip and all that stuff, right? They were still like, okay, but the macro is good, right? Because in their mind, they might not be, you know, as me breaking down analytical parts, right? But you think about it from a mental standpoint, right? In their mind, the macro, so to speak, was still good, right? The micro, they never really cared about. That's the thing, right? people never really cared about the micro to begin with, right? Because again, the anime never had good micro to begin with. So people that are fans of Titan, me included, right, in the beginning, are clearly fans because, again, the macro is good, the mystery is good, the world building and so on, the basement, blah blah. That's why you like it for, right? You know, I never liked Eren. I always said Eren was a terrible main character. You know what I mean? He was a terrible main character. I said it from the beginning, and I said myself, of course, he always been a terrible main character. And I always said, right, I said it from the beginning that Yin is like one of the few only good characters in the beginning of the. In the beginning, right? And we have other terrible character, Ymir, terrible character. I mean Ymir, you know, the first Ymir. Ymir is the fake Ymir. Makes zero sense. Why does she go back with them and then just dies off screen? You know, doesn't make any sense. How does she protect Historia by giving them one power and not telling them the truth of the Morleys? Doesn't make any sense. That is terrible writing. He had to just remove Ymir because she was like, she knew the truth of, you know, the photo. Right? So she was a terrible character. Then he had to just remove her because she would ruin the mystery of the macro, right? Insanely bad micro. They should have killed her instead, right? Was it that? Rainer or better, yeah, something like that. It didn't make any sense that she betrayed them. Zero sense. And also, of course, obviously her powers is a plot hole that she's this shitty, you know, no power Japan. And he clearly hadn't established the power Titan and so on. But for example, Ymir, not a good example of a terrible written character that, you know, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Her action makes no sense. And of course, also the Ymir. The second Ymir with the whole love shit also makes no sense, right? People are Stockholm Syndrome. Yeah, but no, that's not how Stockholm Syndrome actually works. It doesn't actually work like that. No, not that extreme. There'll be a longer video to explain the mental standpoint of Stockholm Syndrome, but, you know, I am from Sweden. I have a degree, you know, in behavior analytics. And no, Ymir's action is not well written whatsoever. Because it really fails on a point that people can argue that, well, she has Stockholm Syndrome, so that's what she did and everything, even though she was a god. That's not how people actually work, because if you get that power, you actually kind of break from the cycle, because you have the power to do what you want, right? And even if you agree that Ymir then was so in love that she had to do it, even if, you know, whatever, then why did she die for it? Because if she's so in love, right, her dream then is to, you know, have more sex or so on with the bad guy, right? So why would she let herself die then, right? So it's completely plot hole there, because either you're gonna claim that she didn't get free because she was so in love, right? But if she's so in love, why wouldn't she stay alive, right? And also, for that matter, Ymir has time powers. She could have rewritten the time so she could actually just be with him forever, you know, having a time and so on. So it also kind of breaks the flow too. Couldn't she use the path to have a better love story or whatever? So it doesn't make any goddamn sense. Like, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's completely plot holy. Because the thing is that if you're gonna argue, right, that her behavior makes sense from like a behavioral, you know, psychological standpoint, right, then you have to also, from a logical standpoint, argue that she has to stay in that personality, right? For example, if I'm gonna argue that, oh, you know, like, Unigasai makes sense, right, in Miraniki, because she's a complete psychopath, right, and so on. But then, if I'm gonna establish she's a psychopath, she has to also be a psychopath in every scene. Right? You can't have a character that's a psychopath in like 8 out of 10 scenes, and the other 2 scenes she, you know, breaks from that thing. Right? That's not how human works, because if you're a psychopath, you're always a psychopath, right? There's nothing like, you can't be a psychopath every second day. It's not how it works, you know, or a psychopath or whatever. So, for example, Yunugasai is actually a quite well-written character, right? Because she's always maximum Yandere, you know, Queen Yandere, you know. She's always the Yandere psychopath girlfriend, right? In every episode, right? She doesn't break from her character, right? Her station is very, very correct, right? All the way through. She's always willing to kill people, right? Always willing to kill, you know, like Yuki's dad or her mom, his mom, whatever. She's always willing to murder anyone, right, for him, or planning to do it, so on, right? Killing probably the girlfriend and with the band and so on. But I spoil too much there. But basically, she's a deranged murderer in every episode, right? That makes sense. If she stopped being that in the episodes, that would be stupid, right? You know, for her love, right? So Ymir is supposedly somewhat of like a, you know, love-stricken based on love, right? Yeah. And yet she's actually followed that. Some episodes or some chapters or whatever you argue for, or in these few chapters she actually has backstory in. Some of them is motivated by her having her sick love, right? And then she doesn't. You know what I mean? That's terrible writing. So imagine that, you know, she's a Yandere, right? Arguably, right? Ymir, you know, sick love, right? And yeah, but she only has sick love in like 2 out of 3 chapters. You know what I mean? And she only has like 3 chapters of storyline. Yet she's not following her logical conclusion of her mental standpoint. in less than that. That's terrible writing, right? I can sit there for days discussing how terribly written these characters are from a psychological standpoint, right? Because they really are. But all of that being said, right, in the ending, he failed his stuff I talk about now, right? But he also, of course, failed the macro, right? Because this kind of stupid love shit and so on, right? That dwells into the macro, right? Because normally, at least, he was good at writing, the bigger picture and the world building and so on, right? But because he couldn't really make that macro work out in the end, right? He made it turn into micro, right? He made it become about the love and the personalities, whatever, right? He completely skipped over. For example, you have this caterpillar, right? You have the evil caterpillar, alien stuff, whatever it is, and Idris and so on, right? But he could really make that work out, right? He had no personality. He just wanted to make Ymir into a god, and for no reason, whatever. And in Zeke's backstory, or Zeke's a flashback, there are more than one caterpillar. So are there more patterns, or why they came from? And wasn't it clearly Yggdrasil in a tree thing with the 9 words of the Norse mythology? And he kind of dropped that plot too, right? And it looks like a brain thing, but also the mural part of the brain of the nap, right? But also as a tree, right? So I see kind of the path there, but also why did it exist, right? And why did it turn into smoke in the last chapter, right? So he kind of dropped all this macro, right? He took a big dump on everything that is macro in the last chapters, right? All of them, he just took a big shit on all of it, and then he just focused on writing micro instead, right? To explain. So basically, he's trying, right, to motivate and explain the macro that he hasn't been able to finish yet, right? He hasn't really finished the macro. He hasn't finished the canvas, right? He hasn't finished that, and he's trying to finish it by focusing on micro. And as I proved, right, he's a terrible micro writer. Then we get this Emus in love, everyone wants to have sex or something. Yeah, we get absolute horseshit, right, of micro writing, right, to try to explain the macro. And of course, that is why the chapter was incredibly hated, right? Because again, people have been defending this. I would argue for, right, train break, right, for more than 1-2 chapters for a long time, right? You can see the train break starts at the time skip, right, and then it gets worse and worse. It progressively, the train speeds up, right, and it gets worse and worse every chapter, right? I would argue for, generally speaking. But at least people were like, well, but the macro is still there, the general, the big picture is still there, right? But then, of course, we get to this last part, and as I argued for when the manga was out, I argued for, even before the last chapter, right, that the last ending was going to be terrible. Because it was so obvious to me that he was going to go, everyone is fine, gash, yeah. It was so predictable, so you could really see where he was going for a few months before that, right? And it's just a terrible ending, right? But I think that, again, the reason, right, people actually finally, they finally see the truth is because he failed so severely on the macro. The only thing that they actually liked about it for the meeting. Because, come on, let's be honest, no one ever got into this anime because they had great micro. Because it doesn't have, it objectively has terrible micro. No one ever really got into the anime because they had so great dialogue, right? Yeah. Or so the comedy was on point, right? You know what I mean? No one, man, sure, you laugh at a few scenes, but no one ever got into the anime because it has great dialogue or, again, great gags, something. Because that doesn't exist in the anime or manga. So, every fan, right, more or less, are there because of the macro. And then when he fails the macro, right, in the last chapters, of course people actually, everyone almost hated it on the internet. Everyone. It's not an argument that it's bad or good, but I'm just saying that it went from, like I said, the manga clearly has had less and less, favorable, so to speak, reviews, right, during the last years, right. And then suddenly the last 2-3, especially the last chapter drops, right, and it's just really hated, right. And then, of course, that's the reason why, right? Because people were like, whoa, the macro really sucked here. And of course, then they hated it, right? It finally broke their coping, right? Of course, a lot of people still cope with it. But I'm just saying that, let's say that it lost, whatever, this is a random number, right? But let's say that it lost 10% of its fans, right? For the last season, okay? But when the last chapter appeared, right? That probably lost another 50%, right? Yeah. It was like, what the fuck? Yeah, people really lost their mind. Of course, I didn't. And I remember when I did the reaction, people were like, why are you more angry? You're also complaining about his writing. It's like, yeah, because I always assumed he was going to fail. Right? And that's crazy. People were like, people angry at me. Because I wasn't more angry. Like, why aren't you more emotional for? I was like, because I told you guys a few months ago that this ending is going to suck. Because he clearly is dropping the macro, going into a micro writing style. he clearly cannot explain this from, he's not even trying to explain it from macro, he's clearly trying to explain it from, cant, right? I called this shit out, right, probably a year before it happened, but at least half a year or so, but I think probably a year before it happened. I called out and said, no, he's gonna fail the ending, because he clearly is writing things into a corner. I kept saying, he's writing himself into a corner. He's abandoning the world building and going into this micro shit, right, that he can't write. And that's why the ending's gonna suck, right? So when the ending actually released, I got people writing me mails so angry at me, like, why aren't you more emotional? I followed you for a year or 2 years or whatever. You've always been very good at being, calling it out. It's like, yeah, because I expected to fail, you know what I mean? And then I might say I'm biased now, but I'm not biased. I just said that because it was so obvious how he changed from writing good macro, right, to focusing on the macro, which he can't write, and he admitted that, right, and I could see that path, right, the path, right, for a long time before. I was one of the very early, so to speak, fans that left, right, you know what I mean? I was one of the people that left way early, right, and then when they finally got the ending, people saw the truth, and he lost half of his fans or whatever, right, and it's, but that's the reason why, right, because if he had a mixture of good micro and macro writing, having a terrible micro ending, right, or again leading into the macro, it probably wouldn't be as a big deal, right, or vice versa, right, but because he always only had really good macro, terrible micro, but people ignore the terrible micro, right, because of the good macro, and then failing the macro in the end, right, of course then people finally saw the truth, right, and there was a terrible writing. But I think it's interesting because I'm sure he actually could have done a good ending, honestly, right? But of course, he should have not done anything with goddamn Eren crying, Ymir, love shit, and so on. He should have focused on actually explaining, right, what the caterpillar is, right? He should have focused on that shit. He should have focused on motivating it, right, from a much better world building. He should have focused it off, right, the mystery of Titan. Because look at it, he never actually even explains how Titan works, right? He never actually explains that with the sun powers or what, So there's several plot threads he dropped, right? If he instead of focus on that stuff, right, coming up with explanation of how this caterpillar has a goal, maybe the caterpillar is like Lavos, okay? Don't see material now. Maybe the caterpillar is like Lavos, so it wants to consume the sun, but it's better than Lavos. He doesn't want to eat the planet, he wants to eat the sun, right? Because the Titans are kind of like Superman, they're powered by the sun. That's what is hinted with Hanji in it's one, right? So what if every human Titan is absorbing sunlight, right, to get the power? That is incredibly how it's implied, right, for the whole system, right? And the caterpillar wants to consume the sun. So the more humans that are Titans, they're working like solar energy battles, right? Then the caterpillar can actually consume the sun, right, by doing that. And maybe it's an alien and it flies through. I almost love his bush again, but you get my point, right? That would have been a better ending because. Yeah, then it would explain like why stuff is happening, right? If you focus on that stuff instead for the last 2 chapters, obviously I just throw out of my ass now, right? But you get the point. If that was the focus then of explaining the actual world building and Eren knowing that the caterpillar is trying to destroy the planet or whatever, right? Like, what if Eren had explained that I had to kill humanity in this way, not all humanity, but most of it. Otherwise, the caterpillar would have destroyed the planet, like Lavos or whatever, right? I'm just dropping some random, video game example, right? But what if that was the backstory? I had to do it to save the rest of the planet, right? Or something, That could have been the backstory, right? We ignored all the shit of Eren crying and Ymir loving and so on, and instead, Eren did it for the greater good, right? And then, of course, Armor said, you saved us, man! Thanks for being a mass murderer to save the planet, right? For example. That would be a much better ending. It would be a macro ending, right? It's focusing on the greater picture, right, of the planet, why it's doing it, and with no micro shit, right? No micro shit. That people would probably love, right? For example, I was saying that's the best ending. That's what I came up with this morning. I was like, what if he had, tried to save the planet by killing everyone? What if he had to do that, right? To, whatever reason, I'm just dropping out some theory here, right? So to speak. But I think people agree with me, right? People agree with me. That would be a better ending. And again, this is an ending I just came up with like 10 minutes ago. You know what I mean? I can make way better endings than that. But I think again, the point is that the endings I am saying now are again focusing on the broader thing, right? That is doing it because of some greater deed, right? He's not doing it because of his goddamn love that he wants to have sex, right? You know what I mean? That's the massive difference, right? Instead of it goes from macro into shitty micro, right? And people hated that because no one ever cared about that. No one ever really liked the anime or the manga because Eren was a great main character. People liked it because of mystery, right? So having the whole last bit focusing about his love story or whatever, and also Ymi's love story, is of course like a massive disservice, right? And honestly, to me, it's surprisingly, I have to say, it feels like the author doesn't know what people like it for. You know what I mean? Like, why do anyone like you? You know? And I don't mean insulting, but I mean like, you meet these people, right? That like they're really good at something, you know, like they're really good at, let's say, fighting, right? I mean like fighting, right? And then they don't understand people respect them for that, so they try to do something else, right? You know what I mean? And you're like, but you're really good at this thing. I don't say you have to do it in your life, but maybe you should focus on that thing you're good at. You know, it's like you have a talent for X thing. Maybe people love you for X thing. Maybe do more of X thing. Don't do Y thing. People hate you for Y thing. You know, it's kind of like it feels like he didn't. Yeah, I feel it's so weird. Or arguably, if I'm going really harsh here, because this is kind of what I think, though, honestly, a little bit. It felt like he had all this great ideas, right? You know, in the beginning, right? Beast, Titan, Basement, and so on, right? This is all the macro X stuff, right? And then he was out of ideas for X stuff. So he's like, well, how do I fix it now? This is my ending. I just gotta get this somehow, right? You know? And that's why probably the last 30s of chapters, or probably more, are so micro intense, right? Which it used to be macro intense. And clearly that's why the lesson was terrible. But anyway, guys, that's a real reason why people hate the Titan War in the ending. Because it went from good macro to terrible micro, and no one likes that, right? Because no one ever cared about that in this anime, or manga, or whatever. That never was his thing. And he only focused on that, and it doesn't make any sense from any aspect, really. Not how it's written, but generally speaking, right? You're like, my god, it is so bad. But anyway, if you're here, you probably agree with me for the video. But isn't it always silly that people are... I know I'm gonna get a comment out saying that you just hate it because there's no action. It's like, no, no, because it's terrible dialogue. If it actually had good micro, I wouldn't care, right? Like, no, because it's terrible. Every goddamn dialogue scene, he can't write for shit, man. He can't write characters. They're so dislikable. Jesus Christ. That's one thing too with the Titan. Almost every character is so dislikable. Holy shit. And like, look at Connie, man. He's a pointless character until still pointless. Even the mom thing too. It's just pointless. What could he eat? You know, Falco. Like, Connie is just pointless, man. For example, holy shit, man. Well, guys, subscribe, hit the like button, and see you guys with some new animes coming tomorrow. We have, of course, new season coming here, and of course, the biggest thing this week is Spy X Family and Kiko-sama, of course, Nafumi back with shit here on Wednesday. So I'll see you guys and have a great day.